What up? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And look at you. You done stumbled upon little OTB Saints, where we bring you all the latest black and gold coverage.
Who are the Saints going to draft? Who's going to be their quarterback? What does the salary cap look like? All that information and more.
Hope you enjoy it. Like, subscribe. So here's a little Saints news to get to before we get to the Xavier Legette sound. Andrus Peat, Jake, reportedly not re-signing with the New Orleans Saints. And your initial reaction is probably like, and I feel that. Although, look, Pete last year ended up being a surprising
bright spot,
balancing force for an offensive line that could not find its way. Like when he moved over to left tackles, when things finally stabilized, the patient that was hemorrhaging on the table, he was the tourniquet that kind of saved what was an offense that was at near death. But so you might be saying, but even so, like it's just not necessarily like a game-changing player. So when you hear Andrus Peat not re-signing, you're probably like, man, whatever. Where it becomes a bit of a problem or maybe interesting is that because you failed to reach a deal with Pete, he is now going to be counting for $13 million in dead money this year.
Yeah. So
Andrus Peat will be on your salary cap, on your books for $13 million, a player that's not that good to begin with, $13 million, and he'll be playing for someone else. And this is indicative of what we have to admit is the Saints cap issue. And there is no more denying that how they have handled the cap is now causing some problems. And it's funny because, for years, there's been two sides of this thing. Like most things in life, they're very extreme, right? One side is like the Saints are absolutely screwed. This is insane. What are they doing? Look how far they're over the cap. And the other side is like, no, there's no problem at all. It's completely fine. You can still do whatever you want. And what we are learning is that, like most things in life, the truth falls somewhere in the middle. Because you even have articles being written by Underhill now and by Mike Triplett, guys who have been at the fore of cap not a big deal at all, that these Saints are actively looking to be more measured this offseason and start to get some of the debt that they've accrued with these voidable years at the end and salaries into signing bonus. They're actively trying to get some of that debt off of the books. And we can go back to Nick's credit rating analogy because that's the one that he's been rolling with. But yeah, they're going cheap. It's why it was Willie Gay. It's why Chase Young is going to visit. And so again, I mean, I get why they're doing this. I agree. You're getting too old. It's time to, and your window's not wide open like it was when you were pushing the limit. So yeah, this is a great year, even if it is a year in which DA's in a bit of trouble, but Mickey Loomis ain't. It's a great year to start to try to fix some of that cap long term. But we just all need to admit that the cap is not an apocalyptic problem, but it is a problem.
Yes, and I am all for, like, when you have a window, and you've heard me say this 1,000 times, when you have the window, keep it open. Keep it open as long as you can, however you can, because you just never know when the next one is going to come. It doesn't matter who you are, what your franchise is, at some point, the window's going to close. And for the Patriots, it was open for 20 years. It was open for 20 years. That never happens, but it happened, and now that window is firmly shut. So eventually it happens for everybody. So when you get inside of one of those windows where you're like, okay, we made a run here, and man, we got some dudes for the next 7 years here on this squad. Like, we've drafted well, we've extended well. We know we can make a run to the postseason for 7 straight years, and by chance, maybe we win a Super Bowl, because once you get in the playoffs, who knows? So I am all for that. But for the Saints right now, they feel like it's closed, right?
Yeah.
It is.
What has?
It is a point where the players that it was open for are no longer either on the team, they've retired, or they're just not the same player, but they're operating like it is open. And they have got to figure out what the plan is going to be, because they're in this limbo of, no, we can still do it. And maybe you can, but in a horrible NFC South last year, you couldn't get it done. So like the cap being whatever it is, right? Agree, disagree. They have to at some point realize that there has to be, it can be a small reset, but it's got to be a reset of some sort. And they just keep pushing things down the road. And a lot of times with the same players and with some of the bad moves that they're making. Like, it's okay if that window is shut for a year and you hit a small reset and you figure it back out, but I just don't know why they're so reluctant to do so.
Yeah, well, I think this is them doing that. You know, eating the Andrus Peat $13 million is probably most indicative of that, because they've obviously they're not surprised they didn't get a deal done. You know, maybe they would have liked to, but like they definitely had it in the accounting to have Pete and his $13 million. It's why you've seen them only sign Willie Gay to a 1-year, $5 million deal. I think that's they signed the fullback as well, but you know, that's not.
They re-signed their other fullback too, Adam Prentice.
What? 2 fullbacks?
Yeah.
Kubiak. Yeah. There you go.
Well,
hey, tell me you're not a fan now, bruh. Come on. What if he carries 2 on the 53? There's no chance.
It's better than it was yesterday.
There's no chance.
No.
But
I actually think Horvath's a better player, but we'll see.
But look, either way, like that's so you mentioned that the Saints have to decide what they're going to do. I think this is them saying, okay, look, we basically made all the moves last year trying to become NFC South champion. It didn't work, but with what we saw at the end of the year and with the coaching changes that we made, we think that maybe it can work, and we're not going to financially overextend trying to chase it, though, right? So it's more like, you know what, we're going to ride with the moves we've already made. We changed something in the coaching, up top, and then hopefully through that, the results can get where they want to be, but we're not going to go chase these results after seeing that our ceiling is just not that high. You know, you're not the Bills, even the Eagles. You're not any of these teams that you could argue are in a 7-year window like Jake talked about where they can get a big signing and go for it. I mean, the Packers are probably entering one after what they did last season. So this is kind of a hold pat strategy and a sink or swim. Can Dennis Allen and Derek Carr save their jobs, win the division, and then maybe if you prove that there's something to build on in this Kubiak era, you go back in. But this is where it gets interesting because yesterday Hunter Renfrow hits the market. Cut from the Raiders. Renfrow and Carr obviously had a lot of success together early on. Last 2 years after the big extension for Renfrow has not gone well. But what that means is that his price is probably cheap. Maybe it's like a Willie Gay type of price. What do you think? Would you explore Hunter Renfrow?
Again, like it just depends on where you're at. Like, do you want to add, we talked about this 2 days ago, do you want to add a veteran receiver to a group of incredibly talented young receivers? Right? If that's what you want to do and that's the receiver that you're looking for, you have had from afar like this love fest of a player that you once knew, and every single trade deadline, his name comes up going to the Saints. And so now you would get him for a different price. You wouldn't have to give up anything to get him. And I don't know that there's a huge market for Hunter Renfrow, not because he can't give you something, but because there's 7 of those guys in this draft this year.
Yeah.
This draft is so deep at receiver that you can get a guy like that. But if for you want a veteran guy, then maybe you go the Hunter Renfrow route. So that's what they have to decide. And like kind of going back to, maybe you are right. Maybe this is the first time they're like, all right, we got to chill just a little bit. But like the move that they made last year to bring in Derek Carr, and they've restructured that deal, like you're still handcuffed a bit with deals like that.
Well, yeah, and because last year they were still going for it.
Without question.
They thought the NFC South was wide open. Derek Carr puts us as NFC South champ.
And that's why I disagree with Hunt's take of Kirk Cousins to Atlanta felt like that. I disagree.
I guess it only feels like that that the Falcons are thinking the same thing.
Yeah, but the Falcons have, I guess, younger, different talent.
Well, no. I'm not saying whether you agree with the Saints' thought process, but the Falcons are thinking we are now going to be NFC South champs because we signed Kirk. Whether or not we agree with them, just like
the coach did say, if we had any quarterback play, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, I mean, just like I thought the Saints signing Derek Carr in this division meant that the Saints were absolutely going to win the NFC South.
But to your other point, there is some hope because of the moves that they've made, like Marcus May releasing him and not trying to make that work and not trying to extend him farther down the road because you gave him this huge contract. He hasn't been a great player. He's had some injuries. He's been suspended, other things. Probably in years past, they try to find a way to just continue to kick his contract down the road and hope that he works out and it doesn't look like a bad signing. Well, they said, you know what? Basically, you can't play here. and we've got a young guy, Jordan Howden, that I think can compete for this job. Maybe we draft somebody else as well. So those type of moves, to your point, aren't moves that the Saints have typically made. So maybe they are finally getting to a point where they're trying to get it a little bit better in order to, hey, we're at 14. Let's see what happens. Let's see if we can move up, if we can draft a piece for the future. This year is what it is, but we can compete sooner if we do it this way, opposed to just continuing to kick it down the road.
Yeah, and it's a situation where you have so many veterans on this team, Jake. You won't completely fall off a cliff. Now, you may be mired in mediocrity, which you could argue in some ways is worse, but you're not going to have a Panthers type just complete debacle. You'll still be floating around 500 as you're getting money off the books, as you're adding to the draft. And then maybe once, the Carr era is over, you kind of shape the rest of the team to where, okay, Carr's old, he's done now, and we actually like it. Now we can go for a quarterback, whether it's to the draft, through free agency, whatever, and see if that thing can get us back to being a contender. So the first signs that these Saints are slowing down, continuing to kind of show this offseason. Andrus Peat now being on the books for $13 million in dead money, the latest showing that.
One last thing, because this move, we talked about it. You had an offensive line that struggled during the season, and Pete was probably, again, he was a bright spot considering where his career was, and he gave you stability at a position you didn't have any. Okay, he's going to be somewhere else. Hurst, who's a starter, I don't know that they're going to sign him back. He might be somewhere else. So you had a bad offensive line that is losing 2 starters. Now, I think McCoy's still a really good player. Ramczyk, I'd love to see him healthy. We don't know where his health is. He restructures his contract. You need to see way more from Cesar Ruiz. So where do they go if they don't have the money to draft starters? Okay, if you are sign starters through free agency, do you draft starters? Can you get one at 14? Do you spend another first-round pick on an offensive lineman? Are you banking on a new offensive line coach getting Trevor Penning where he can at least be a starter, where you can throw him out there and not, be worried he's throwing no-hitters like Nolan Ryan? Where are they right now at the offensive line? Because that is going to be, right now, is there a bigger question on the team?
No. I mean,
I know everybody wants receiver and a weapon on offense through the draft. I think we all would love that.
That's where you could go like a Renfrow. But then the problem is there's just no trust with drafting linemen right now.
Or in the 3rd round, you can get a Tez Walker. You can get a Ricky Pearsall if he's still there. You can get a Jalen McMillan from Washington.
There's I would say this, though. If I wanted to be sunshine pumping about the O-line, I think they will be put in better positions to succeed this year. I think even last year, part of the improvement wasn't just Andrus Peat and others kind of solidifying, but it was also running more play action, keeping the defense a bit more honest, a bit more on their heels. I mean, Eric McCoy was very, very upfront and clear about this at the end of the year. Not saying that means you could just plug anybody in, but that too is an element in potential improvement. So an interesting offseason as the Saints look to clear some debt. What will they do next? Wow, just amazing black and gold takes right there, Jake.
I don't think I've ever heard any takes that are better than the 2 guys that just gave you that take.
And you can keep getting them by going ahead and liking, subscribing, ringing the bell to get notifications when we post. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next OTB Saints.